Ladies, what is going on with your money? Did you get your stimulus check or still waiting for it to arrive? Are you comfortable talking with your friends about your money goals and how you're going to spend that stimulus, or is that still wonky territory? And how goes your job? Did you get your first paycheck of the year today, or you're looking for your new opportunity? We're going to talk about it all here on the katihyershow. Money, careers, relationships, women, and Jesus. I am your host, Katie Heyer. Think of me as your metaphorical big sister as I guide you to making much better money decisions than I did when my husband and I were first starting out, because, oh boy, did we make some mistakes. The good news is I share our mess, so you don't have to make those same mistakes. Plus, we have a lot of fun while we do it. And I must say, I'm excited about this show because people need a little bit of encouragement. 2021 is already starting out rough. People are hurting still. There's a lot of sadness, frustration. And so my prayer is that this show, by me just being honest and vulnerable with you guys and pointing back to the source, that I can encourage and uplift you guys at the same time as help strengthen your personal finance chops. If you are new to the series, this one is all about looking at money through the lens of the Proverbs 31 woman. Why, you ask? Great question. I had stuck the Proverbs 31 woman in a teeny tiny little box with an apron on it and a homemade bow because I wrongly understood her as just a small stereotype. I understood the Proverbs 31 woman wrongly, again, as a homemaker and nothing more. And I am not a good homemaker, so I was not interested in the Proverbs 31 woman. The good thing is, guys, I read it again and again and realized, holy moly, there's so much more here than I had seen before. She's not just this thin character upon whom I should model how I put my house together. She's much more than that. She has a fantastic, deep faith that lets her have rich relationships. And she's a savvy business lady. She's good at relationships in her career. She has employees. She's a good businesswoman. She makes investments and sees that there's a profit. So in the bounds of this show, she is a great study because we want to be rock stars with money too. And she is held up as the model for the kind of woman that a king should marry. So really, this is a queen we're talking about. She's a queen, and we can learn from her. Let's jump into it. Proverbs 31:14. She is like the merchant ships bringing her food from afar. She is like the merchant ships bringing her food from afar. Proverbs 31:14. Last episode, I dove into a Bible study of these two German Old Testament scholars. They were Lutherans in the 1800s, and they looked at the original Hebrew text to figure out what the real meaning of the text was. Because, and you may know this already, but we lose some of the richness of the words when we translate into English, or when you translate any language from one to another. You don't get all the nuance that's there. And so their Old Testament commentary, and I'll link to it in the show notes on the website, is so illuminating. We begin again with them today. They look at this verse and talk about more than just she goes to the store and comes back with food for her house, just like a merchant ship goes and comes. They say, no, it's more like being The art of a ship that is purposefully directed, equipped, sent out, and managed by a spirit of enterprise. Enterprise, of course, being a project or undertaking that typically requires great effort. Guys, this is so good. I can't wait to jump into this. So, there are a couple levels here that I want to look at. The first one is tactical, very practical. She goes out like the merchant ships, some translations say, and brings back her treasures from far away, from abroad. Tactically, you're going to feed your family. And if you are getting your financial life in order, if you're stopping the paycheck to paycheck cycle, you're getting your emergency fund together, that's baby step 1. You're paying off all your debt and not ever borrowing anymore, that's baby step 2. Or you're fully funding a real emergency fund of 3 to 6 months, that's baby step 3, then you are looking for every single place you can find to shrink your expenses as much as possible. That means you have to think creatively about how you can feed yourself if it's just you at home, or your family for as little as possible. When we were getting out of debt, we made about $35,000, $40,000. My husband was working part-time at Starbucks and part-time at the Melting Pot and part-time at Apple. He couldn't get a full-time job at that point, so he was doing 3 part-time jobs. I was working for the state. And we owed $154,000 of student loans, and it was crushing. I don't want to race beyond this point. I am excited to tell you the lesson, but I need to go slow here. That was horrible, realizing that we had this much income, little bitty income, and this much debt. And we couldn't see the finish line. It was really hard. And you might be feeling like that if you're lost and you don't know where to start. So the baby steps that I teach, Dave Ramsey's baby steps, they are 7 simple steps that you need to take to go from broke as a joke, as I like to say, to financial peace. And you do just one at a time. So baby step 1, focus on $1,000, getting $1,000 in the bank. Baby step 2, pay off all your debt, focusing on the littlest one in front of you so you can get momentum and keep going. And so on and so forth. So when you're shrinking down your grocery budget, you have to look at a lot of different places. Maybe it's online, maybe it's couponing, maybe it's different stores. And why am I talking about this? Most Americans eat all their money. They eat it at lunch when they go out at work, or they eat it at the grocery store when they take, like I do, 4 children in the grocery store and every kid is pulling stuff into the cart. And you're just so emotionally fatigued, you don't have it in you to fight them and get it all out of the cart. And you get home and you realize, I went to Walmart for milk and I came back and I had spent $300. We've all been there, guilty. But be like the merchant ship, bringing your treasure back from abroad. Look for places that can feed your family well on a serious budget. Some of the most expensive stores in the nation are Giant Eagle, the Fresh Market, Whole Foods, also known as Whole Paycheck, Acme, Harris Teeter. If you're getting out of debt, I really encourage you, stay away from these expensive stores. You can still eat organic at Walmart. It's there. Check it out. When we were getting out of debt, we would make 4 stops on a Saturday. We'd start out at the dollar store so we could get paper towels and sponges and soap and sometimes laundry detergent and other housewares for cheap. Right down the street from the dollar store was the Walmart. And Walmart's where we would get all our pantry goods. Rice, cereals, pasta sauces, some special things like non-dairy milks. Then we would go to the Asian market to get some sauces and spices and flavorful things. So we wanted to eat all this cheap food we were making at home. And then we would end at the produce stand because the produce stand had cheaper produce than Walmart. The Asian market had cheaper sauces and spice packs than Walmart. And the dollar store had the cheapest house stuff. So we would make a run around the block to 4 different stores to keep our budget low. When we first started out, our weekly budgets for all of our food and groceries, not including dog food. Some people have pets. That's a separate line item. All of our food and toiletries were $80 a week. We had to be really creative about how we planned what we were going to eat. Some of the best weeks for the lowest amount we were able to spend were $50 weeks. We didn't make a lot of money, so every bit that we could squeeze out of the budget was more that we could throw on our student loans so we could get out of debt faster. So we were always motivated to see, how could we save? How could we wrench down that budget item? And those $50 weeks were when we would do something called the Pantry Challenge. That's where you inventory everything that's already in your kitchen. What's in your pantry, fridge, and freezer? Plan meals based off of those places first, and then just fill in the gaps with fresh fruits and vegetables. And you can save a lot of money. That's what we had to do when we were first starting out, because the grocery budget was one of the only things that we were able to control. You know, you can't change your rent. You can't change your car insurance. Those are fixed expenses. But groceries, you can go down on them quite a bit. So you might have to think creatively. You might have to break out of your routine and not go to the Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's seems affordable. It's definitely delicious. One of my favorite places on the planet. I love Trader Joe's. But if you're trying to feed a lot of people, you might need to think a little more creatively about how you can do that on a really tight budget. I used to live within walking distance. My little family used to live in an apartment within walking distance of a really nice grocery store. Even though there were a lot of kids, and that would have been so convenient, just right next door, we couldn't shop there because our priority was freedom. We did not want to be a slave to the lender. So it took a lot of effort, being like a merchant ship and getting our treasure from far away. Back to our proverbial woman. Speaking of her merchant ship, the proverb says she is like a merchant ship. And guess what a ship is prepared for? It is prepared not only for smooth sailing, it is prepared for a rolling sea. It is prepared for the storm. And I'm reminded of this quote, "A ship in harbor is safe." But that is not what ships are built for. So my question to you is, are you financially prepared to ride out a storm? And I was thinking about this because of the stimulus check. If you're waiting for the stimulus check to change the game for your finances, let this be a wake-up call. I pray that one day, if a stimulus check ever passes again in the future, you won't blink. You won't need it. It will be a cherry on the way, 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 way top. And if it doesn't come in for months, it's not going to make a difference to you, because you will have followed the biblical principles that set you up for high seas, for a financial storm. And if you don't get the stimulus, it's okay. That's my prayer for you. I learned just this week that millions of Americans aren't going to get it because of some kind of IRS error. And my heart just breaks for the people who are so desperate and waiting for it to come, and it's not going to come for a long time. I hope that I can help them, you, anybody, to be able to not need it. I want to help your ship be ready for the rolling seas. So if you need the stimulus, then this is a wake-up call for you. If getting the stimulus is a game changer for you, it's time to change the game. Let me say it again. If getting a stimulus check is a game changer for you, it is time to change the game. That is because I want you to be ready for any financial storm that comes your way. So, how do you change the game? Number one, you got to stop borrowing. You got to draw a line in the sand. So, I asked some of my closest friends on Facebook, how long have you been credit card debt free and credit card free? I got so many answers. Last year was my first year I was debt free. I've never had a credit card. I haven't had a credit card since birth. Another person said, I haven't had one for a year and a half. This person said, I haven't charged anything on one for over 3 years. No clue. 2005. This person said they cut theirs up last year. They're working on 2 years. A friend of mine said she has been credit card free for 10 years. I like this person's answer. She blew them to shreds on the gun range in 2013. On and on and on. The responses kept rolling in. People have been credit card free for 16 years, 28 years, 27 years, 43 years. How do all these people do it? They realize that the idea that you need a credit card, it's a myth. But what about renting a car? There are plenty of companies that let you rent a car with a debit card. When I rent a car, I use my debit card. But what about fraud? You have the same exact fraud protections with your debit card as you do a credit card. But what about buying a house? I bet you already own a house if you're asking that, because you were convinced that you needed it in order to buy a house. There are plenty of ways to buy a house without a credit card, including manual underwriting. The bottom line to remember is the credit card industry is a monster that feeds off of you going into debt. They feed off of your interest. They feed off of your fees. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want you to be a part of that either. I want freedom for you. I don't want those monthly bills to chase you forever. And you really don't have to have a credit card. You don't. Number one, stop borrowing. Draw a line in the sand. Number two, have that emergency fund. This is baby step number one. $1,000 in the bank is going to give you some peace of mind if you don't have it yet. And if you're on baby step 3, which is you've paid off all your debt and you already had that $1,000 in the bank account, baby step 3 is piling up 3 to 6 months of expenses. So what happens if you get laid off? If somebody gets sick, if there's an unplanned for pregnancy, if you need to leave the workforce to take care of mom and dad? Well, if you have 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in the bank waiting for you, that emergency isn't financial, because you are ready to face that financial storm. So that's number 2 for changing the game. And number 3 for changing the game for believers is tithing the whole way. The tithe comes from the word for a tenth. And Christians have taught for centuries that we give first to God the Father out of obedience, out of love, out of a recognition that all that we have, we don't really have. It's all His in the first place. We are just managing it for Him. We didn't always tithe perfectly. You know that on this show, I'm very honest. Did I cry yet? I'll probably cry. We didn't tithe when we first were married, and for a couple years after that, we didn't know how to manage our money, so there was nothing left to tithe. Come on. We gave a missionary $600. We wrote them a check. We really didn't have the money. We wrote it anyway. Months go by, and the missionary sends us a text. Hey, thanks, guys. Just wanted to let you know I'm going to go ahead and cash that check this week. Thank you so much. You know, just giving you a heads up. Ruh-roh. Dun, dun, dun. What are we going to do? By that time, I think we had $600 in our bank account. So if they were going to cash the check, we'd be wiped out or go under. And we thought, Do we tell? Do we tell them? Do we tell them? Are we honest? Or what do we do? We didn't know what to do. Should we just call them and say, don't cash the check. We can't really give that to you anymore. We thought we could, but we can't. Sorry, I hope you didn't count on us. We need you to be generous to us now. I mean, it was just not a good situation. We walked to the mailbox at the end of our driveway, and in the mailbox is a check for $605. And the note said, I don't know why, but God told us to give this to you. I'm not kidding. I think we screamed in the driveway because God's example to us, his loving faith and his provision was just so undeniably obvious to us. And that just cemented for us the realization God's got you. He loves the sparrows, he says in his book, and he cares for them. How much more does he not care for his children? Wow. Okay, that really turned my mind on how to tithe and how to make it part of your everyday life. So when you are looking at your budget, put the tithe at the top. That way, you don't get to the end of the month and there's nothing left to tithe. That way, you'll be set up to be able to be generous. You can plan for generosity instead of wondering, how do I ever get there? Let's jump into talking about that budget, by the way. Let's say you're able to really pull down your food budget. You're able to go take your groceries down from $700 to $425, or $425 to $350 if you're a single person and maybe you have a roommate. Or this is just an example. It's not perfect numbers. That's a really low budget. Well, you have some money left to throw at your priorities. So what do you do with it? If you're using the EveryDollar app like we use, again, it's free. You do not have to pay for it. We use the paid version, but you don't have to. It will tell you at the top how much you have left to budget, because remember, every single dollar that you earn has to have a job. It has to go to savings or be spent or be given away. That's the only thing you can do with money. Save, spend, and give. That's all you can do with it. What are you going to do with it? So if we were in baby step 2, which is paying off all your debt, you would take whatever's left and you would throw it at the littlest one. So maybe it's a credit card bill. So now you take 55 plus 75, I'm going to do math on the fly. $130. You just add it up, you add it on there, you throw it to it, and then you start to see traction. And every time you save a little bit, you take whatever the difference is, you update your, for example, grocery budget, or if you spent less on gas, you update your gas budget to match reality, and you take the margin and you throw it at your priority. Budgeting does not have to be hard or scary or feel like a straitjacket. It is a tool to help make your vision reality. So jump in your budget often and honestly. Let's see if we have any mail today. We do have a tribe question. This week's question is, if I'm living paycheck to paycheck, shouldn't I stop tithing? This is a great question. I hear it a lot. And first of all, I would venture to say that God knows your heart. We tithed based on volunteer hours before we were unemployed or we had $1,300 student loan minimums. We couldn't figure out how to do it. So I'm not going to tell you you should go into debt to tithe. I don't think that's biblical. But I would encourage you, When's the last time you, just saying, when's the last time you asked God for help? God, can you provide me more? Can you show me that side hustle that is perfect for me? Can you please bring my hours to full time? God, can you show me the direction I need to go? Just ask for blessing. I mean, we're told that he is a father and he loves giving his children good gifts. And you and me, we're his children. So why don't you ask him? That's what I think of when I see that right away. So I hope that encourages you. I hope this helps you to start readying your ship for any financial storm that may come your way. As 2021 unfolds, I hope that I continue to be an encouraging, empowering voice for you. So please subscribe and share so that all the other ladies and gentlemen in your life can be rock stars with money